So for clickbaity titles, who do I think is gonna be moving up in 2016? I'll give 5 players that I believe will be doing better relative to where they are currently. And I'll give this note just that if you are already like a really good player, to move even higher is going to be difficult. So I take that into account. So what I imagine is like when you run a mile, and let's say you run a 15-minute mile, getting to 14 miles is way easier than going from 7 minutes to 6 minutes. So I'm going to start off the top and give some of the more obvious ones of people that are already like, really solid. But my first rising star goes to SFAT, and I just think that ever since we saw the CLG sponsorship for him, he's been, putting in a larger effort to become better. And we've been seeing some really good results start to formulate around SFAT with the 5th place finish at Genesis 3. We've seen him win an SSS recently, top 8 performance at PAX. And so overall, I just think that he's going to be doing a really good job, and I think things are starting to come together for him, whereas last year he was going to a lot of Game 5s but not really closing it. Now we're starting to see him get some wins, and I think a lot of people will remember the Leffen set the most, where he lost the money match. But overall, I think this is a guy that is kind of going under the radar. I mentioned him on Twitter a little bit, but for the fact that we're starting to see some top 8 performances out of him, and they're starting to become more frequent, I just think that we're going to see performances, and that he's going to be a player that will be talked up to the demigod tier by the end of the year. Another player in the same vein is Ice. I think Ice really impressed me with his top 8 performance at Genesis 3. Hasn't really had something like that in a while, although he had some close encounters where I believe he placed 9th at Big House 5. He beat Plup pretty decisively, and he just looks really clean. And although he has some matchup issues, he lost to Envy at Tipped Off 11, I believe. I think that just his matchup spread is still really solid against the top tiers. And I think that we're going to see more of him with his sponsorship and more European nationals, and I think he'll have his chance to shine, and he'll come into his own. Whereas previously, he was kind of in Leffen and Armada's shadow, where everyone would talk about Leffen and Armada and ignore Ice. And then 3 other players, these people are starting to come into their own. And so the first one I'd like to give a shout out to is Gravy. And Gravy, a couple of years ago, was seen as this player that the Korean DJ match was a total fluke. We would never see that again. And a lot of people have kind of harped on him for the 20GX stuff. In 2015, he actually had some good wins. Narrowly lost to Pew Pew at CEO, but then he had some random losses to people like Crush and Dreffen. And so overall, hasn't really had that breakout performance. But at the local level and at the regional level, he's starting to come together. He beat Coble at a SmackDown. He's defeated the Moon the last 2 times he played, so he's really good against really good against Marth. And he also beat Drug Fox 3-0 at the last Florida Monthly, and so this is a player that's starting to look really scary. I think that all the fundamentals all the pieces are starting to come together for him, and I think he also beat Nintendo, so a lot of quality wins, and I think that the next time he comes to a national that he's going to get really far, and he's a player that will probably be underseeded. And if I'm a top level player that plays Falcon or Martha or a Spacey even, and Gravy's on, I would not want to really play him, just because of how consistently good his punishes are. So he's a guy that I think will jump at least 20 to 30 ranks, provided that his mentality is good, and that he doesn't get any nervousness or anything like that. I think that his national performances will reflect over to what he's already doing in the local level. Another player, KGH, he impressed me very much at Big House 5. He does have some matchup weaknesses, noticeably with Falco, but he did make a monstrous run, I believe, at Frostbite last weekend, where he came through losers, beat Hugs, in 2 sets in grand finals, beat Duck and some other good players, and so he's overall, starting to do really well in the Michigan region. Really technical, really fast, and everything's starting to come together for him as well. And so I really expect him to have some breakout performances in Evo and at some of the bigger majors this year. Lastly, I think for Slux, I've talked about a few times, and to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed in his 2015 campaign. I didn't think it quite came together where he lost to Chillin' Dude. I thought that by the end of the year he would be this top 40 level player. Not quite there yet. Has the drive, has the hunger, and I think he will travel more. And so because of that, and because of the decent rate of improvement I've seen over the past 2 years with him, I think that provided that he does get the right resources, I think he will do really well in 2016, given that he will have more opportunities to succeed. So I hope that he gets like a mid-tier sponsor that will at least subsidize some of his costs. And so those are my 5 players that I really believe that will move up in the ranks in 2016. So just to give a recap, in the ready top tier, SFAT and Ice, and then other 3 players are Gravy, KGH, and Slox.